Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Schmidt. I'm a fourth-year medical student who helped plan this event tonight, along with two excellent third-year medical students, Jane Yoon and Matthew Stein. Give them a little round of applause. Before we begin, I want to thank Mikey Cassidy and Dean Mitchell, as well as Annalise Husler and Dustin Wright in Student Affairs for sponsoring our wine and cheese reception that you all partook in, hopefully, and helping with coordinating this event tonight, even though it was a holiday weekend. So thank you. So the Past Medical Histories lecture series is an opportunity for our esteemed Georgetown professors and faculty and clinicians to tell us about important lessons that they have learned over their careers in medicine and to share advice or wisdom with us future physicians, hopefully. We hope to encourage and inspire medical students and sometimes even current physicians with stories of humanism in medicine and perhaps some of the challenges and triumphs in a career in medicine. In recent years, we've incorporated resident speakers in the fall and medical students in the spring in an effort to reach out to some of our first and second year students who maybe haven't been on the wards yet. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. John Costello, otherwise known as Johnny. He's a general surgery resident in his fifth year. Third and fourth year students overwhelmingly voted for him to speak at tonight's event. He completed his undergraduate degree at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, studied medicine at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. He's a current Georgetown general surgery resident, completing research for pediatric surgical innovation at Children's National Health System, and he will soon be starting his fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery at Loyola University in the Medical Center of Chicago, Illinois. So with that, let's have a little round of applause for Dr. Costello.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you everyone for having me here today. It's truly an incredible honor to be here as part of this experience. And so I just wanted to talk to you about some of my experiences in medicine so far over the course of my general surgery training. And this opportunity, for a lot of personal reasons, which I'll mention shortly, is truly, I'm very grateful for and incredibly humbled to have this opportunity, particularly considering the amazing professors and residents and other students who have spoken at this lecture series in the past, and of course, a couple of years ago, Dr. Adams as well. So it truly is an honor. I didn't attend Georgetown for college or medical school, but your support from all of the students and welcoming spirit have always really made me feel a part of the Georgetown family since I started here as an intern back in 2010. And at the same time, just before I start, I also want to commend all of you and thank you for all of the hard work and great care that you all, truly the medical students, continue to provide to our surgical patients here at Georgetown on a daily basis. Having you rotate with us is always truly special because your enthusiasm and awe at what we do is really inspirational for us and me in particular. So thank you as well. When I was in medical school, we actually had a beautiful old lecture hall like this. It was called Hurd Hall, and I saw quite a few amazing lectures while I was there. Medicine Grand Rounds were there, and we had some clinical lectures similar to this. But one of them actually I saw was by Dr. Atul Gawande, and the author of Complications and Better, and he spoke about safety in medicine, and it was truly spectacular, and this is along the lines of his book that came out, The Checklist Manifesto. And it wasn't, though, a complete amphitheater like this. It was just really one half. And it's, given my interest in surgery, I would often, when I was in that amphitheater, I would often look at some of the old pictures of old operating rooms, really operating theaters, as they used to be called, that existed actually in the hospital where I was, and then so many others across the world. But I never thought I would have the opportunity to really be in one or certainly give a lecture in such an amazing setting. And for me personally, in fact, it was a room really similar to this. I know this is a lot newer, but a very similar style that some of the first pediatric heart surgeries in history were performed, which is something that's very personally special to me. So thank you very much. I've been incredibly fortunate to interact with and learn from so many amazing physicians over the first 10 years of my medical training. Their styles have certainly been varied, but watching them teach and practice has allowed me to see what I must improve upon, learn the many ways that I can and must be better, and discover the kind of physician that I dream to one day be. Slowly, I hope and believe that I am developing into a physician who has a skill set to help patients as I move forward throughout my training and career. For me personally, one of the most profound learning experiences I've ever had from a physician or a clinical educator, actually, though, was not in the hospital, it was not in the operating room, it actually wasn't at the bedside. Rather, it actually came in the form of a keynote address at a pediatric cardiac surgery meeting that I attended back in October of 2014. And this meeting is very small. It's only about 200 or so attendees, and it takes place in a hotel by O'Hare Airport, so nothing too spectacular in Chicago. But it is an amazing conference and, for me, incredibly special. But at that particular meeting, there was a keynote address given by the president of that society, and it was titled, the keynote address was Pediatric Cardiac Surgery, It's a Wonderful Life. And it spoke on 7 wonders or lessons that had been experienced by a physician named Dr. John Brown. He's a world-renowned pediatric heart surgeon, and he spoke about these wonders that he'd experienced over the course of his actual 40-year career in pediatric heart surgery. It was actually a very funny lecture, as evidenced by Dr. Brown's story that when he actually told his wife the title of his talk, again, Pediatric Cardiac Surgery, It's a Wonderful Life, she questioned him immediately by saying, "For whom?" And she actually suggested that she have the opportunity to give a rebuttal at the end of his talk. But it was also emotional, and it was inspiring. He spoke of his family, his support structure, and his patients. He spoke of how the medicine he practiced was wonder-filled. Admittedly, as I've gotten a bit older, I must say I do often struggle to stay focused throughout the course of any lecture, but during that talk, I was motivated by every word. I've never personally met Dr. Brown. I have seen him close, but I've never met him. But after hearing him speak that day and learning from his experience, I truly feel that he's one of the greatest teachers from whom I have ever learned. I personally have never been trained as an educator, and I don't have the year's worth of wisdom to draw upon that so many of my professors, my faculty members, or Dr. Brown had. But I at least hope today I can pass along a little bit of the experience that I've had in medicine so far to you all today. When I first began to study medicine at the start of my medical school, and this is back in 2006, I really could not believe that I would ever see patients with all the conditions that I was learning about. And during my time in medical school, that actually was certainly the case. However, once I came into residency, the clinical volume that I encountered was so incredibly high that I started to see some of even the more rare diagnoses very early on in my training. In college and during the first 2 years of medical school, when I was learning about medical disease for the first time, intellectually, the more rare conditions were the most intriguing and often pushed me forward and motivated me to continue studying. But as I began to learn and practice clinical medicine, I realized that truly the most interesting aspects of every condition that I encountered were the patients themselves. Patients are truly amazing, and their lives are so special. No matter how old or young, their stories are captivating, and the lessons they continually teach are like none other than I have received in my life. They instruct in a way that cannot be emulated by any other experience. They show us actually how life is lived. Now, unfortunately, I've forgotten some of the exact words that many of my patients have spoken to me over the years, but there are several specific lessons that truly remain firmly in my mind, in my memory, and I'd like to share a few of these lessons with you today. Going back to medical school, when I was in my 4th year, I rotated for 1 month on a burn surgery service that had once been in the old City Hospital in Baltimore. And in addition to treating burn patients, that service also cared for patients with chronic wounds, similar to the limb service here at Georgetown that many of you have or eventually will rotate on during your surgery clerkship. The burn service at any hospital is always challenging, as the stories are frequently heartbreaking in a way that always accompanies traumatic injuries. Down the hall from the main burn ICU was the burn and chronic wound floor. I remember the floor well because it's the first time that I learned the great technique of ultrasound-guided peripheral IV placement, which is something that's been incredibly helpful to me throughout the time of my training. However, it was also the floor where I met a husband and a wife who taught me a lesson that I will truly never forget. The wife was bedbound due to chronic illness and had developed a very large sacral decubitus ulcer as a result. Despite wonderful nursing and wound care, this ulcer was not improving, and it truly just was not healing. The patient's husband inquired to us as to the possibility of using a flap of some kind to cover this wound. Now, given the patient's permanent bedbound status, clinically using a flap is very challenging in this situation with a very low probability of success. The team explained this to the husband, that they did not think it would work, and he expressed very clearly his understanding of this. Yet he persisted, and acknowledging that surgery may not work, he simply, calmly, and elegantly said to me, "But you will never know if you don't try." And I can't remember the exact details on his face. I remember the room, I remember it being dark, but his emotional expression is still at the forefront of my memory, and it resonates within me today. With his encouragement, he showed us the right course of action for his wife, and he taught me the incredible power of trust and belief. I, of course, was only a very small part of a very large team, but that experience is the first time that I truly remember appreciating the great trust and hope that patients and families place in us as physicians. It is an incredible honor and a privilege that we must always respect. Earlier this spring, I had the great opportunity to personally meet a physician named Dr. Denton Cooley, who is a true heart surgery pioneer. I met him as I was interviewing for a position in a cardiothoracic surgery residency program. In fact, tying it into our lecture today, Dr. Cooley was actually one of the individuals who was photographed at the operating table in an old surgical amphitheater truly similar to this room during one of the first pediatric heart operations in history, and it was for a cyanotic heart condition, tetralogy of Fallot. At 96 years old, Dr. Cooley still spoke with ease about his thoughts on the field of cardiac surgery and where it was going. It was such an exciting experience to shake hands with him and speak with a physician who had directly impacted the lives of tens of thousands of patients over the course of his career. In fact, he authored a memoir known that I encourage many of you, if you're interested in surgery or just great medical history, it's called The 100,000 Hearts, the 100,000 patients that he actually personally interacted with over his career as a heart surgeon. And as someone training to be a surgeon, it was very special to actually receive a signed copy of his book with a note and inscription on the inside that actually read, "From Cooley Hands." But it was his direct advice, as amazing as that was, to the trainees that I was with, that I wrote down and wanted to convey with you all today. Dr. Cooley's advice was very simple. He encouraged all trainees to always be punctual, complete their assignments, and do the necessary paperwork. Those were his 3 big points. And he said these tips, he said they may seem like common sense, but he was stating them to a group of trainees who had already completed a minimum of 4 to 6 years of residency training. These were not interns. These were a group of mostly senior residents or people that even finished residency training. What he was doing is he wanted to remind us to appreciate the importance of never putting oneself beyond any task related to patient care, no matter how small or trivial it may seem. This lesson on dedication and diligence to all aspects of medicine was crucial for me to recognize and continue to place at the forefront of my daily bedside care. The last story that I wanted to share with you this evening is a lesson on caring for one another. With the busyness of residency and that continues into clinical practice that I know I've seen in my friends who are now attending physicians and my faculty mentors in this department and beyond, I found that it's often very easy to get caught up in work and only focus on oneself. It's an aspect of training that I strive to be better about every single day. Although we often discuss the importance of balance and perspective with my co-residents and my faculty, the most important and direct lesson that I've ever been taught on this topic came directly from one of my patients, and it was actually quite recent. While I was rotating at the DC VA Medical Center here during the first few weeks of my chief residency here earlier this summer, I admitted a patient who had a large symptomatic aneurysm in his lower abdomen. Even though it was approximately 1 o'clock in the morning, the patient was adamant and steadfast that the admission to the hospital be on his terms, or else he would stand up and walk out of the hospital. And I knew he was truly serious about leaving the hospital because he had already done that twice in the past few days at the same hospital. I quickly came to appreciate that it would be a real challenge to earn this man's trust due to his prior negative experiences with physicians. He stated that he felt as though doctors were forcing him to do things that he was not ready for. And so when he felt that he was not being allowed to live his own life and make decisions that were best for him, he would simply leave. After quite some time speaking with him in the emergency room, he agreed to come into the hospital and stay the weekend to undergo surgery at the beginning of the next week. At the time, I did not know exactly what changed his mind, but at that moment I was just relieved that he chose to stay. Over the next 2 days, we eased most of the restrictions on his activity level and travel throughout the hospital as he continued to boldly state, and frequently he would actually point his finger directly at me, and actually he pointed it to me multiple times, and he would say that if we put conditions on his care, he would leave. Despite everything, though, somehow he stayed. And as I got to know him better, he slowly opened up to me that the real reason he was so steadfast in his desire to receive medical care on his own terms was that he was scared, so much so that he had cried. He knew his condition was serious and immediately life-threatening, but he needed the time to decide for himself that the help of others was necessary to fix the problem. He told me that this was only the second time in his adult life that he had cried, the other being when his wife of many years had passed away. His fear and concern were truly palpable in that moment as he said that. When looking at him in this light, it is no wonder that a weekend hospital admission was no simple thing to him. Meeting him that early Saturday morning and hearing his story and perspective on life could easily have been one of the greatest lessons I have learned and one of the best to carry with me going forward. However, it was his true compassion and thoughtfulness on the Sunday morning of that weekend which were the real lessons that he gave to me. After I'd rounded on him for a couple of days, I felt as though we had developed a good degree of mutual respect for one another, and perhaps I was slowly earning a little bit of his trust. After Sunday morning rounds, I went back and visited him a bit later on in the morning to see if he had any further questions about surgery that he would undergo the following week. He was in great spirits and was even smiling. He told me that he was ready for surgery and that he trusted the team. He had officially decided for himself that surgery was what he wanted. He knew that it would allow him to continue living his life. And then something very interesting actually happened. The next thing he told me was, he told me to go home. He told me to go home and spend time with my family. And the words that he actually used were, go on and get home to mama and the kids. And that's what he had said. And there's many of you who have rotated the Veterans Hospital. It's truly how most of them are gentlemen are. They're just very straightforward and to the point, which is wonderful. But during one of the most scary and difficult periods in his entire life, when he had all the right in the world to focus on himself, he was caring for me. It was such a profound moment. It is a moment that I certainly won't forget. It taught me that in the process of practicing medicine and treating patients, we must not overlook the simple acts of caring that are present in our lives every day, and to always remember to share those acts with the ones around us and those closest to us in our personal lives. So in the end, respecting trust, being dedicated and diligent, and caring for one another. Those are simply 3 of the countless lessons that I have been taught in my brief time in clinical medicine. I hope you've enjoyed at least a little bit of some of these stories today, and again, I thank you for the honor and the opportunity to share my thoughts with you this evening through this lecture. It really will be for me an experience that I will always remember. And the last thing I want to say is that even though many of you are at the very beginning stages of your medical training, I hope that you yourselves also remember that you have lessons to share with that all of us can benefit from, and you have these lessons already. These lessons will make us not only better physicians, but they'll truly make us better people too. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Costello. Our next speaker is Dr. Bridget Opong. Dr. Opong is an assistant professor of surgery and attending physician in the Division of Breast Surgery at Georgetown University Hospital. She completed her medical degree from the University of Rochester, as well as her general surgery residency. She attained additional training as a breast surgical oncology fellow at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. She's deeply invested in research focusing on minority health and health disparities in breast cancer, invasive triple-negative breast cancer, and fertility preservation for younger women after cancer diagnosis. She's also very passionate about international breast health and improving cancer care in developing countries. So we're so excited to have her speak with us tonight. So without further ado, Dr. Bridget Opong.
This is your chance for a break if anybody is tired or bored or sleepy, or if you need another drink. Just saying. All right, let me go ahead and have deep pockets. Not that I'm rich, not in that way. Literally deep pockets. So I'm going to turn this on. Okay, so thank you guys for inviting me. I was invited to this lecture last year, and I didn't even know what it was about. Of course, I said I would do it because I love to have the opportunity to talk to you guys, to the students. But once I really had an idea of what it was about, I was really excited to participate. It gave me a chance to really just do some reflecting, what I've done, where I've been, and what I'm planning on doing. So it's an honor, and I thank you for the invitation. All right, so I had a little disclaimer on here that everything is, I haven't had much wine, so I will behave. I did promise before. I don't want Dee Mitchell to call me. All right, so to begin, I think it makes sense to kind of share with you my origins. In case you couldn't tell, my last name is a little different. I was born in Ghana. I won't tell you what year, but I'm not that old. For those of you, this is a map of Africa. For those of you who don't know where Ghana is, it's in the west. No kidding, a lot of people don't know, because I get Guyana, Guinea, people have no idea. But there it is. Is there a pointer? Okay. And if you look here, there's a sort of a zoomed in view of Ghana, and I was actually born in this little city right here, Accra, the capital. So, Ghana is a small country, probably now about 27 million population, developing country, but we're doing well. We're probably doing better than most. And here's some pictures of, there's a beach, so it is nice. We were given our independence from the British in '57. And this is a picture that my sister, I actually had a birthday last month, so my sister sent me some pictures just to clown me on Facebook. But I used some of them for this talk. So this is me probably before I came to the US. So my family brought me to New York City, and I was raised in the Bronx. From time to time, we would go back to Ghana, and this is a picture to the right of my brother and I visiting my grandmother. Over the years, the interesting thing about going to a developing country is that things change really quickly. So when we say it's developing, Ghana's been sort of rapid fire. Every time I go back, even now, there's something new. Big buildings, it's just really modernizing very quickly. However, I always show this chart because it puts things in perspective. The reality is the life expectancy is only about 61. So the life expectancy in the US is about 78. And in Western Europe is about 80 to 81. So obviously Ghana is truly a developing country. We have a lot of work to do to get our healthcare and other standards to sort of a Western standard. But with that said, Ghana is doing a lot better than some other countries. You see on this graph here, like Mali and Nigeria have even lower life expectancies. The other thing about being born, and of course I was raised in New York, but I'm aware of just advanced disease, right? When you go to a developing country like Ghana, you just, even walking into markets, you see ridiculous things that you wouldn't see here. You know, if you look to the right, these two kids have umbilical hernias, and that's like a basic, what we call bread and butter general surgery case. But you'll see presentations in Africa that's just completely out of control because there's no resources, there's no money, there's no care. And to the left, this unfortunate lady has a severely locally advanced breast cancer. And even before I even had thoughts of medicine, these were sort of things that I would see, and I never understood, like, you know, why are these people not getting anything, not getting any care? And of course, you know, my parents would say we were more fortunate than many people in the country, but they would say, well, they don't have the money. And in Ghana, if you don't have the money, that's it. There's no free clinic. You know, there's no Hoya clinic where the, you know, wonderful students run. You just don't have any options. So because of my background and because of my knowledge of how things are in many parts of the world, I was attracted to medicine. And when I was in high school, I had a teacher who said to me, you know, we actually had majors then. This is a unique situation. I went to Brooklyn Tech, for anybody who knows or who cares, a high school in New York City. And he said to me, you know, I was a biomedical sciences major even back then, and he said, you know, you have a gift, right? You're doing well, you're smart. He knew that my family, no one's been formally educated, and he really said to me, you need to recognize what you have and what you can do. And that really sort of pushed me towards medicine, because I wanted to be like an artist. I wanted to be cool and fun. I didn't want to be a doctor, you know. But he said to me, think about your options, because in what way can you use your life, your experience to really help people? So this is something that I struggled with, you know, through college. I actually was an English major. I lived in England. I traveled all over, and I was, you know, I was ready to be a writer or something of the sort. But I was always pulled back to medicine just because this man, this teacher of mine, I said, whenever I see him, I'm going to remind him that he totally infected my brain, right? Because he said, you know, pretty much this quote, and people actually think this is John F. Kennedy, but it's actually from the Bible. It's often misquoted, you know, which says that when you do have a gift, when something is given to you, you are also required to give something back. And that's, you know, whenever I've had flirtations with other careers, that always has pulled me back to medicine. So fast forward to medical school in 2000. And I went to University of Rochester, as you guys were told before. In Rochester, I had sort of the same idea. I'm not in this picture, by the way, so don't look too hard. University of Rochester, I was attracted to the school because they had a primary care focus. And my planning was, you know, if I'm going to do international health, I should do something general medicine, you know, something where I can treat just about, you know, any condition. So I thought maybe family practice, med peds, but lo and behold, I hated it. So I didn't like the pace. You know, I wanted to do something. I wanted something more procedure oriented. So I sort of had a flirtation with OB, and I actually did a rotation in Ghana doing OB. And when I got back to Rochester, OB was miserable. I didn't like that either. I said, oh no. You know, I wasn't interested in that. I didn't have that, and I was talking to somebody how important is your experiences in deciding what you want to do. You know, I just wasn't welcomed, I felt, in OB. So, and that matters, you know, so moved on. Now, who I did meet in medical school was this woman here, Dr. Gretchen Arendt. And she's a breast surgeon. She's now the director at the University of Pitt. And she was I think she's the first female surgeon that I ever met. She was the only female surgeon at the University of Rochester, and this is 2082, so it's not like, you know, I'm not that old. I keep saying that, because I just had a birthday. But Dr. R, but just surgeries, just obviously very male-dominated. She was the only woman on faculty, but she was a powerhouse. And she came and gave us a lecture, you know, just kind of like I think I've done for the medical school at some point. And part of what she talked about was breast cancer and disparities. And she said to me, you know, Black women are dying of breast cancer at rates that are really unacceptable. And I said, oh, I had no idea. I mean, we hear of health disparities and everything. I mean, that's the thing about medical school. I felt like, damn it, every condition Blacks do worse. And every time you see the statistics, you're like, oh, crap. You know, the only thing, maybe melanoma, fine. Melanoma, we don't necessarily have a have a high rate of melanoma, but pretty much everything else, you know, and you sit there, you're like, God, you know, we're just not doing well when it comes to so many medical conditions. But I actually was not aware of the statistics for breast cancer. So when Dr. Arndt gave this lecture, I said, oh my goodness, you know, this is horrible. And I talked to her afterwards, and you know, she said to me, why don't you consider breast surgery? And I was like, no, I'm doing med peds or family medicine at that time. You know, she said, but you can make a difference. You know, she said, there are very few female surgeons, and there are almost none Black female surgeons. This is a disease entity that you can definitely impact. And she said, I want you to consider it. And that was amazing for me. That was the first time, I'm sorry, let me go back. I've lost something. What did I do? Something bad. And that was the first time anyone has sort of taken me, you know, sort of welcomed me. And is it here? Oh, it's left. Okay. And that was a big lesson for me, because that was the first time I felt and actually sort of said to myself, geez, you know, it's nice when people like you, right? When people want you to be doing what they're doing. So sometimes you go with the current. And a lot of times, like I said, I was an English major, right? I'm sure most of you know Robert Frost and his poem, you know, so it was always kind of cool to be different and the road less traveled. Now, by the time I hit med school, it was like, no, you want to go sometimes you want the easy way. Not saying that you're lazy or you're cheating, but sometimes you want to go with the current. And that's something that I had to learn, because I always felt like I had to fight for everything, but you can't fight constantly because it's a waste of energy. So you have to sort of conserve your energy for only certain fights. And if there is an easy way, if there is a path that you're being welcomed to, I think you should consider it. That's what I did. So I decided, hey, let me try breast surgery. And of course, I always had the angle of international health. So that was sort of what I wanted to do. And I remember we had a meeting, we had a visiting professor, and you know, they kind of go around and they say, oh, so, you know, each resident, tell us what you want to do. I said, oh, I'm going to do breast surgery, and I'm going to do international health. And he said, international health? Why would you do as a surgeon? There's no role for that. You know, if you want to go into Africa, you need to be infectious disease. You need to be treating HIV, malaria, and all these things. And that totally, you know, you felt like a fool, frankly. This was a public venue. And so I had to do some work, because I knew it wasn't true, but at that time I didn't have sort of the knowledge to express it in a way that was appropriate. So that particular event, of course, nobody wants to be, you know, humiliated. Sometimes surgery feels like it's, you know, all you do is receive public humiliation. But a good buffer is preparation, right, Johnny? A good buffer is preparation. Prepare yourself, and that's something that I learned. And I learned this in many different ways. So, for example, prepare yourself, not just in relation to what you want to do. Have your answers ready. What do you want to do? It's not, and it is not a phony or rehearsed answer, but you need to have your answers. So I should have said, you know what, there are statistics showing that non-communicable diseases have increased in Africa, and that's why I'm interested. I hadn't done that at that time, but I learned that I had to be prepared, okay, for all things. Also be prepared, this is an aside, but for your rotations, right? Don't say, oh, it's the first day. Everybody's gonna, you know, everybody knows it's the first day. Reality is most people don't care that it's the first day. First impressions matter, so be as prepared as you possibly can, all right? Another story is when I went to medical school in Rochester, and I also stayed in Rochester for residency. So when I matched in Rochester, I talked to the program director, Dr. Peacock, and I said, how should I prepare? What should I do this summer? Oh, don't worry about it. Take a vacation. So I said, really? I shouldn't read? Like I shouldn't, buy a Savastin and get going? Oh no. Surgery is everything on the spot, on the fly. It's through, through the fire. Complete nonsense. He set me up, y'all. Completely. You do not want that, because like I said, nobody's gonna say, oh, it was the summer, she was in the Caribbean with her med school friends on the cruise, that's what I did, because I was dumb, and I listened to his advice, right? So I didn't read. I mean, I read a little bit, but not like I should have. So you show up on the floors. My first rotation was trauma, and I really like trauma, but of course, I wasn't prepared. And you start getting your first evaluation, and that's when you start getting dinged. So people know when you're not prepared. And the first day does matter, so there's no forgiveness. There's no, oh, it's a first day. Surgeons, and we're not all nice and wonderful like Johnny and myself. All right? So here's some quotes that I like. I have a lot of quotes in this because that's what I do. My phone is full of quotes. My office is full of quotes. I believe in visualizing, having things that you want to work on, that you think that are important to you, surrounding you, just so you always have it sort of on hand and in your thoughts. All right? So be prepared. And of course, you have to do the work, and that's sort of part and parcel. So when that gentleman asked me, well, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, hey, I want to do breast cancer surgery, and it's national health. If I had done my research, I would have given him this statistic, right? That. And I did give this talk when I was a chief. We gave our little grand rounds, and this is what I talked about. I talked about that, the statistics are showing that there's a trend from communicable diseases to cancers and non-communicable diseases in the third world countries. And breast is obviously among the most commonly diagnosed. And also that the global burden, 70% of cancers worldwide will be in low and middle income countries. So it's not infectious disease like we're thinking, right? And this projection is only going to increase. And the sad part is, because of the misconception that everything should be focused on infectious disease, we're just woefully unprepared to deal with this problem. And if you go to most African countries, they don't have diagnostic services, they're certainly not screening, and they don't have the treatment. So it is a huge problem. Next lesson that I learned throughout all this, and I kind of talked about this before, the notion of giving back. You have to give back. I think it makes you a better person, it makes you feel better about yourself, it makes other people feel better about you. I think society views doctors as people think we're super rich, especially surgeons. Don't you think, Johnny? Your family's hitting you up for loans all the time. Everybody, patients think, well, my bills are astronomical if I have a procedure, and they think that you're getting all the money, and then the fact is that we're totally not. But with that, I think we're not. But you should still give back. And people expect you to, and you should want to, frankly. Right? So here's some of the things that I do around January and February. I always think of Martin Luther King Day. It's sort of my day to remind me to do some service. And it's non-medical service. I do a lot of missions and work with the underserved, but I try to do something that's not completely health related. This year I did this program, and STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math program. And this is actually kindergartners in Southeast. So I spent the whole day, and I'm so glad I didn't go into teaching, put it like that. 20 kindergartners, and we were teaching them to build. Just the idea, we're trying to encourage these kids to get into sort of, more tech-based careers, and it starts early. They need to be exposed to, other minority people who have done the same thing, professionals. So I went, spent the day with them, and it was just really great. It was good for me to be, first of all, out of the hospital, because sometimes you feel like you live there, and it was good for the kids to see, somebody who looks like them who's doing something that they view as sort of, grand. I also do, of course, with my specialty, I do a lot of work with the breast cancer advocacy groups. This is a organization out in PG County that I go to. I give talks, and I'm actually talking to them in about 2 weeks because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I'm not wearing pink. but you get this was supposed to be pink, actually, my little design there, but it came out red. But work with me. All right. Other things I do, this is a picture of my mission to Nigeria. This is old picture actually from 2012. And with this organization, we went to Abuja, which is the capital, and then we went to other rural areas in Nigeria. And I mean, literally there are days you had 500 women waiting for breast exams. And I mean, like that first picture I showed you, that's how some of them would look like. They just come in, they take off their clothing, and they've got these horrible tumors that have been completely neglected. So again, for me to go and, although I mean, I probably did maybe a dozen surgeries in a week, and that's not a lot, but you know, for those 12 women, that was a big deal for them, you know. So it's important, and if you ever have a chance to do a mission, do it. Okay, and I think Johnny talked about this also, but honestly, take care of yourself, because a lot of physicians are unhealthy. We're not taking care of ourselves. We're neglecting our health for the sake of our patients, for the sake of our families. Especially in fields like surgery, because, you know, nobody wants to be weak. You can't tell your attending, oh, I'm tired. I mean, you're going to get punked, right? You're going to get clowned. So you're never going to say that. But the reality is you do get tired, and it's completely normal to step aside and take care of yourself. This is a quote that I found. I told you I have a lot of quotes on my phone. And it says, my goal is to build a dream I don't need a vacation from. So this is the ultimate goal. I haven't found it yet. But while I'm working towards that goal, I make sure I take my vacations. That's me in San Juan. That's me in Ethiopia. I go to a lot of different places. And I try to combine fun with, you know, healthcare. In Ethiopia, I did obviously touristy things, but I also went to the hospitals, and you want to know how healthcare is there. I mean, they had one cancer center for the whole city. It was a complete, you know, disaster, to quote Donald Trump. I'll deny that. I'll deny that tomorrow. But the hospital was the hospital was in complete disrepair. They just, I mean, they were talking about an 8-month wait for breast cancer patients. I mean, that's just completely unacceptable. But I think to me, it's important to go and you can only impact the problem if you know the scope of it. So it's really important to be out there and see it and do your own assessment. Okay. Other things I do is I read, and I know we always tell you guys to read. We're constantly harassing the students to read, but I want you to read non-medical things also, right? Don't forget, I was an English major, so I'm always reading. This is the last book that I read. But take a break. Physically, mentally, everything, let it go. Don't go home, which I do constantly. Oops, sorry, y'all didn't need to be made deaf. But you know, I constantly go home and I'm doing notes, even if I'm, you know, my family's there, I'm still on notes. And they're like, will you stop that already? And you have to make yourself do it, because you have to look out for yourself and for your family. All right, and this is the end of my talk. But another author that I really have been fond of is Wayne Dyer, and I know he passed away in 2015. He's been really tremendous in my life, frankly, especially during the days of my surgery residency, you know, when times were kind of crazy. And one of the seminars or one of the lectures that he gave was this, based on a nursery rhyme. I know it sounds a little crazy and very unsurgeon-like, but he took the nursery rhyme, the row, row, row your boat, and he sort of compared it or sort of related it to real life, right? And with that, it's really simple, but I think it really gets the point across, because it's you're rowing your boat, your vessel, towards whatever goal you want. And do it gently, right? And by that, be kind to each other, be kind to yourself first, and then be kind to other people. Be kind to your patients, right? Down the stream, like I talked about, go with people like you, right? You don't always want to go up against the current and expend all your energy in unnecessary fighting. And also do it merrily. Try to be happy as much as possible, okay? Whatever merry means to you, whatever happiness means to you, as long as it's not like illegal. You don't want to do that. And lastly, life is but a dream. That, I don't know about how much I bought into that, it's a little too metaphysical for me. But life is brief, it's short, okay? We all, that, you know, I lost my brother when I first started Georgetown. My brother died suddenly, he was in the military. And that was a wake-up call for me, because literally those first 2 years, I think I was here, I was in my office till like 9:30. I worked. And, you know, that's not the way to be. Nobody was left when I left the building, you know, except for the cleaning crew. And, you know, so I got to talk to everybody and all that, but don't be like me. That's why I'm giving you this lecture. I want you to be better than that. So take care of yourself. And most importantly, that you will have obstacles, things will not go your way, and that's okay. You know, the key is that let it go, start again. We carry a lot of angst, a lot of burdens, and I even joke in surgery, we carry a lot of PTSD. Somebody asked me, do I get together with my co-residents? And I do. We're meeting next week at the American College of Surgeons. But it's funny, somebody sent me a message on Facebook saying, I really don't want to go to the reception, because I mean, do we have to see them again? You know, it's just, people are still hanging on to all that animosity. And I literally send them this quote. I said, look guys, we gotta let it go. Let's just meet, have fun. Those people that we didn't like, we're still not gonna like. We won't trip them or try to do anything crazy. Just let them be. But again, ultimately, you have to let it go and you have to move on. Okay, that's all I have for you. I hope it was helpful. Thank you.
So thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Dr. Opong and Dr. Costello, for the excellent speeches. I think we left with a little inspiration tonight. We got some tiny gifts for you that we'll give you on your way out. So thank you for coming out. And thank you all for coming today. And we hope to see you in the spring. Thank you.